Hey there friends, welcome back to another Legally Armed America video. I'm of course Paul Glasgow here, the one and only truth pimp dealing you a vulgar display of logic and reason on a daily basis. I'm going to follow back up on that New York story. Real quick side note, I was incorrect and I want to put out a retraction or a correction, whatever you want to call it. Probably something you've never heard of because mainstream media and most media outlets simply won't make a retraction or a correction like I'm about to do. I showed you a picture in my video earlier today where I showed three mistruths, myths, whatever you want to call them, about the New York shooting. And of course they were the fact that there was a white guy involved that CNN claimed, clearly a black guy.
They know he is a male, possibly white.
Oh, real quick, somebody said I was lying because the guy's not blacker than Wesley Snipes. Stand corrected. He's blacker than Barack Obama, not Wesley Snipes. And the other thing I mentioned that was a myth was the suppressor. There was no suppressor. That was clearly the pad from the rifle sling that you saw in the picture as he was approaching the building. And of course, when we saw the firearm later on, after it had already been used and the suspect had taken his own life, you could clearly see the muzzle device on the end of it, indicating that there was no suppressor on there. However, I did make one mistake based on what everybody and even AI are telling me. When I looked at this picture, it looked like the table was incorrect. In fact, I still can't see it. I mean, it's still playing a trick on my eyes. But I looked at where this board appears to be sloping downward, and I said this was an AI, likely an AI picture. A lot of you had corrected me and said, no, it's not an AI picture. This is an actual picture. This is the real picture of the guy laying there, which makes me now question why there's no blood, but that's another video altogether. But I do appreciate that. In fact, what I did was, it's kind of an ironical way of doing this. In order to see if it was AI, I asked 3 different AIs. Is this AI generated? And all 3 of them said, we can't tell for sure, but it has all the aspects of being an accurate picture, and it never pointed out that desk area. So I'm going to retract that and tell you guys that I was likely incorrect. Again, I don't have confirmation on that, just what you guys have said and what AI has told me. So let's just say the picture may be real. However, I wanted to generate some thought with the rest of this video. Something has bothered me since probably I woke up this morning because I expected to get a lot of information on the 2 shootings from yesterday. Remember yesterday morning at 7:30 a.m. in Reno, I believe it was 5 people were shot, 3 were killed. The suspect was shot and taken into custody. A few hours later, we had the New York shooting, right? I say a few, half a day later. We know a lot. There's still plenty we don't know, but we know a lot about the New York shooting. We know he traveled from Vegas, went across country. We know he played freaking football in high school. We know his dad was a former, I think, LAPD officer, or at least a cop somewhere out on the West Coast. We know tons of stuff. We don't even know the guy's name in Reno yet. And that's really bothered me because anytime they're not telling you something, they're clearly telling you, we don't want to tell you. And I also found it a little bit peculiar when that Reno story came out. There wasn't a lot of talk about it, and then boom, the New York story completely covered it up. So I took the time to do kind of a side-by-side comparison of the 2. And I want you guys to take part in this. And the whole purpose of this is to try to generate some critical thought. I want you guys to help me. If nothing else, it's just to satisfy our curiosity of why, of the big why. You know what I mean? Why? Now, quick side note, I'm going to tell you right now, I understand New York is a massive market. And Reno was what, 3rd largest city, 2nd largest city in Nevada? Not a huge market. Even if this had happened in Las Vegas, still wouldn't be as big as New York City, one of the biggest cities in the country. So I get that. The whole market share thing, I understand all that. So please understand I took that into account already. But that still doesn't dismiss the fact that we know so little about what's happened over in Reno. And again, back to my side-by-side comparison. I'll spare you with some of the details up at the top. This was just simply my side-by-side comparison because I wanted to look at it. Again, Reno, 3 killed, 3 injured. 2 critical, 1 released, 3 minor injuries. New York City, 5 killed, including the suspect, 1 critically injured, and 4 with minor injuries. This is the big one for me. Suspect in Reno, unidentified male. in critical condition after police shooting. The New York shooting is this guy, 27, from Las Vegas, dead. Now, kind of weird that we have two shooters from the Las Vegas and Reno areas in Nevada shooting somebody and killing people on the same day. Not saying that they're connected. I'm just telling you, that's a crazy, crazy coincidence, right? And again, the Tamura guy did drive from Vegas all the way to, he drove there to shoot people, which is wild. But the biggest thing is we don't know who our Reno suspect is. We don't know his race. We don't know his culture. We don't know his age. We know nothing about the suspect. And they have him in custody, again, in critical condition. Weapons used, same thing. Handgun used in the Reno shooting. They say it malfunctioned initially. In New York, they're calling it M4 AR-15, but it was an AR-15, not an M4. An M4 is a weapon of war. That's what they use in the military. An AR-15 is not. The suspect wore body armor, they claim. Now, I dug a little bit deeper, and I don't see any pictures or any confirmation of body armor. Again, I'm not telling you he wasn't wearing it. I'm not saying this is a lie. What I'm telling you is there's no pictures of it, not even like a little, an edge of it showing that. The picture where he walks into the building and talking about possibly having his chest puffed up. I was really perplexed by that whenever they said that before they had even found the guy. Like he hadn't shot himself yet. And they're saying it looks like he's wearing body armor. The picture doesn't look like that. His chest doesn't look puffed out to me. So I found it a little bit odd that some of the experts and officials, quote unquote, were saying before the guy had even been captured or found that he had body armor on based on the way that picture looked with his, quote, chest puffed out. It seems kind of weird that these guys were calling that before we even had any kind of real confirmation of it, because the picture clearly does not show it. Had he been wearing that on the outside of his clothing, I would say, yeah, of course they can see that. But you can't see that right here. But the other guy, they're obviously not talking about body armor at all, but they won't even name the type of handgun. I'm surprised we actually have that there was a handgun used in the Reno shooting, because the details and information are so slim coming out of that particular instance. Now here again, suspect's background. No known connection to the victims, motive unclear, no details on the background on the Reno shooting, nothing. New York City shooting, documented mental health history, former high school football player, worked security at a Las Vegas casino. We know everything about this guy, but nothing about the other one. That doesn't have anything to do with what area this came out of. It doesn't matter that the New York shooting had all this going on in a big area. It doesn't change the fact that when you investigate something, you withhold information in one area, but you don't in the other. What's the difference? I understand geography, but why the difference in putting information out? This right here might answer part of that question. The investigation, it's being led by Sparks Police due to Reno officer involvement. In other words, Reno officers when there's shots involved. Another department, typically, usually it's the state police. I don't know why in this case Nevada State Police aren't doing this, but the Sparks Police are investigating this because Reno police were involved in this. So that's who's investigating this. Notice the NYPD and FBI investigating. Other than this guy going from one state to the other, there's not a huge difference in why somebody else should be involved in this. I question why the FBI is involved in one and not the other. We have deaths in both. Both of these were in public areas. I don't understand the difference. Why would the FBI be involved in just the New York one and not the Reno one? Now here's one right here that I want to point out some differences as well. Motive and target. Obviously Reno, we have nothing there. Information is again sketchy and very rare. New York City, possible targeted motive linked to the NFL brain trauma concerns. Those still under investigation. Now, I'm going to give them credit for this, for knowing that. This was from a note that was found in the shooter's wallet whenever they found him. So, yeah, I mean, if the other guy didn't have any, then I understand that there's not a, quote, note to tell him why. So I do get that, but they sure know a lot about the New York City guy. Now, in both cases, it seems like law enforcement was on the scene pretty quick. Reno, swift local police and security response investigation led by Sparks Police due to officer involvement. New York City, large-scale response involving NYPD, FDNY, and FBI with focus on suspects' travel and mental health. I do need to point this out that's a little bit sketchy about the New York City shooters. The fact that this guy drove cross-country, parked his BMW down the road from where this building was, got his AR-15, did not have it in a case, backpack, or anything like that, had it at his side in his right hand, simply walked down the street up to the building and went inside. Notice the people standing around. In fact, the two little guys having a little chit-chat, probably over their Starbucks latte with a little pumpkin spice, seem not concerned at all. Look at all the other people standing out front. Nobody appears to be bothered that a guy with an AR-15, not law enforcement clearly, is just cruising up to a building with a very determined and brisk walk. So those are the crime differences that we see so far. I think other than lack of information, they pretty much align side by side. So again, to me, should garner the same amount of national attention or even worldwide attention for that matter. Let me show you that comparison also. It's not just me or my perception that the coverage is different. It's actually different. My side-by-side comparison of the media exposure here, look at the Reno shooting. Moderate coverage, primarily from national outlets like AP. They go on and describe that, where the New York shooting is extensive coverage from major outlets, every major outlet, right? Prominence, yeah, the Reno shooting is less prominent, and we have to assume again that's because it's from a smaller market, right? You would think, even though it's a pretty heinous crime and pretty bad, again, people murdered. New York shooting is high profile, lead story in pretty much every national and international outlet out there. Now this was kind of a big one here because the media always shapes these stories to fit their narrative. So I wanted to show some narrative framing here. Reno is being framed right now as a random act of violence with no clear motive, limiting narrative depth. The coverage for the most part has emphasized the swift police response and community shock, but lacked any detailed follow-ups on victims or the suspect, where New York City framed as a complex incident with potential motives like the NFL related grievances, mental health issues, detailed victim stories like the Officer Islam's heroism, family impact, and suspect background, cross-country travel, suicide note. This all fueled ongoing coverage. But this is because they identified the guy. If we knew who the Reno shooter was, we might be looking at the same type of, quote, interesting details with the Reno shooter. But by withholding that information, you can't fill in all these other blanks for the Reno guy. Now finally, I want to show you a visual of the coverage. I thought this was pretty eye-opening to be able to explain a lot of this, again, from a visual standpoint, so you could really see the differences in the coverage, again, of mass murders that happened on the exact same day, right? National coverage. Look at the difference in national coverage. Twice the amount of national coverage from the New York City over the Reno incident. Local coverage about the same as far as doubling it. International mentions I thought was pretty high too. You know, it's well over double the amount of national mentions, or excuse me, international mentions for New York versus Reno. Now that's pretty understandable to me because a lot of other countries, you know, they may not even know where Reno is on a map. They obviously know where New York City is. So that middle stack right there, that makes sense to me. The next ones were mentions on X, again, more than double of the New York versus the Reno incidents. Now, the prominence over here to the far right-hand corner, this is a little bit different. This is not necessarily an average or a culmination of all these other ones. This is really weighting various things. And what I mean by that is, if you have two newspapers in New York City and two newspapers in Bald Knob, Arkansas, who are putting a story out, well, the ones in New York City they're going to have more weight, carry much more weight because they're more prominent, right? So that's a kind of a good example. It's not really a 2 for 2 or a 1 for 1 comparison. It's really where that outlet is, meaning it's probably going to have more viewers, more eyeballs, and carry more weight. Again, prominence, right? So that's why I have this chart. So the other ones are numbers simply added up. This one is prominence, but still we're dealing with the same thing. It's still a 2 to 1 ratio regarding the New York City versus Reno incident. Biggest thing in that, again, guys, is why. I understand the markets. I get all that. We don't even need to go down that. Why don't we know who the Reno guy is? Why don't we know anything about this guy? Nothing. Certainly no pictures. We have the video of him running across the parking lot. This is a horrible video on top of that, but we do have that video. That's it. We know something happened in Reno, and we know it was a guy. We barely know he had a handgun. I don't even know how they got that information because they seem to be withholding everything else. But we do know there was a handgun. Love to know your opinions, guy. Tell me why. You guys always, I get such good information in the comments section. The feedback is incredible. I want to know what you think the reasons are. Now, we haven't even gone down the rabbit hole on New York City. New York City, that shooting, and this may be why, but it goes in every single possible direction. You know, a guy drives cross country with an AR-15 that he did purchase legally, by the way, parks his BMW, walks with an AR-15 not concealed, clearly open as he walks down the street. What did people think he was doing, right? Goes into the building, shoots a bunch of people, and then there's crazy stuff. You can tie all kinds of stuff back to people in that building, from the Blackstone to the NFL. Heck, there's KPMG. That is an auditing firm, a big-time auditing firm, well paid for, well funded, and crooked as hell auditing firm. They're in the building. One thing I made a suggestion on X earlier, go follow me on X, is that maybe since this building now at 345 Broadway or what, Park Avenue, since now the building is a crime scene, maybe they should subpoena everybody's records, because KPMG was the auditing firm that audited Wells Fargo and a bunch of other companies and found that there was nothing wrong until other companies came in that were more reputable and found everything wrong with not only Wells Fargo but a bunch of other companies that somehow another KPMG had not even found. So they were paid off. Corruption, right? Maybe what they should do is declare this entire building a crime scene so that they can subpoena the records of KPMG and find out and get to the bottom of what really happened. Just saying, that was my quick side note there on that. But there's a lot of crazy stuff in New York City. But, again, guys, other than the location having a little bit of mystique because of who's in the building, we know about who pulled the trigger in New York. That's why the rest of the story seems to be so interesting. Why are they suppressing the information in Reno? That's what I want to know.
I'm sorry, I thought this was America.